The scream of shattering glass woke me at 2 a.m., a sound so sharp it sliced through the haze of my dreams. Downstairs, my husband, Daniel, stood over a broken wine bottle, his eyes wild, his phone clutched like a lifeline. "You'll never touch my business, Claire," he spat, voice thick with venom, as if I'd been the one caught whispering secrets to someone else in the dead of night. I stood frozen at the base of the stairs, my bare feet cold against the hardwood, my heart pounding like it might crack my ribs. For 12 years, I'd been the dutiful wife, organizing charity galas, raising our daughter, Lily, and smiling through Daniel's late nights at the office. But the rumors had started months ago, whispers from friends about Daniel's meetings with his assistant, Vanessa, that lasted until dawn. I'd ignored them, chalking it up to jealousy or gossip, until tonight, when I saw the text on his phone. "Miss you already. Same time tomorrow." The sender's name was Vanessa, and the timestamp was 1:47 a.m. I didn't confront him then. My hands shook too much, and Lily was asleep upstairs, her soft snores a reminder of the life we'd built. Instead, I cleaned up the glass, the shards cutting into my palms as I swallowed my rage. Daniel stormed out, claiming a work emergency, leaving me to stew in the silence of our too-big house. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to cry or beg. I was going to fight. Daniel's business, Sterling Enterprises, was his kingdom, a real estate empire he'd built from nothing, or so he claimed. He'd always kept me at arm's length from it, saying, "You don't need to worry about the numbers, Claire. Just keep the house running." But I wasn't just a housewife. Before Lily, I'd been a financial analyst, sharp enough to spot discrepancies in balance sheets from a mile away. If Daniel thought I'd stay on the sidelines while he and Vanessa laughed behind my back, he was about to learn how wrong he was. I started small, digging through his home office when he was out. Papers were scattered everywhere. Contracts, invoices, emails printed out like he was afraid of digital trails. One email caught my eye, from his lawyer, Richard Hale. "We need to discuss the offshore accounts before the audit." Offshore accounts? Daniel had never mentioned those. My stomach churned, but I copied the email and tucked it away. If there was something shady in his business, I'd find it. And if Vanessa was part of it, I'd make sure they both paid. The next day, I called Richard. He'd always been polite at company dinners. A silver-haired man in his 50s who seemed more loyal to Daniel's money than to Daniel himself. "Claire, this is unexpected," he said, his voice cautious over the phone. "Is everything all right?" "I want to talk about Sterling Enterprises," I said, keeping my tone even. "Specifically, the offshore accounts." There was a long pause. "I don't know what you're talking about," Richard said, but his voice cracked, betraying him. I smiled grimly. I'd struck a nerve. "Meet me tomorrow," I said, "or I go straight to the auditors with what I've found." It was a bluff. I had no proof yet. But Richard didn't know that. He agreed to meet at his office, and I hung up, my pulse racing. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. Daniel's empire was built on secrets, and I was going to tear them apart, brick by brick. That night, Lily asked why Daddy wasn't home for dinner. "He's working, sweetheart," I said, brushing her hair back. She was 9, too young to understand betrayal but old enough to feel the tension. I hated lying to her, but I'd protect her from this mess until I had to. As I tucked her into bed, I thought of Vanessa, her smug smile at the last company party, her hand lingering on Daniel's arm. She thought she'd won. She had no idea what was coming. By the time I arrived at Richard's office the next day, I'd pieced together more. A friend in finance had tipped me off about Sterling's recent deals, shady land acquisitions, payments to shell companies. Richard greeted me with a forced smile, his hands fidgeting with a pen. "Claire, let's not make this messy," he said. "Daniel's business is complicated." "Then simplify it for me," I shot back, "starting with why you're hiding money offshore." His face paled. "You don't understand what you're getting into." I leaned forward, my voice low. I know about Vanessa, and I know you've been covering for Daniel's mistakes for years. Help me, Richard, or I'll make sure everyone knows. He stared at me, his jaw tight, and I saw the moment he broke. All right, he said finally. But you need to be careful. Daniel's not the only one involved. Richard's office smelled of leather and old coffee, the kind of place where secrets were buried in file cabinets. He pulled out a folder, his hands trembling slightly, and slid it across the desk. This is what you're asking for, he said. But once you open it, there's no going back. I flipped it open, my eyes scanning pages of transactions. Millions funneled through a web of companies in the Cayman Islands. Names I didn't recognize, but one stood out, V. Kessler. Vanessa. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just sleeping with my husband. She was in on his schemes. How deep does this go? I asked, my voice barely steady. Deep enough to ruin him, Richard said. And others. Daniel's been skimming profits, hiding them offshore to avoid taxes. Vanessa's been helping him set up the accounts. She's smarter than he is, Claire. She's the one who knows where the bodies are buried. I clenched the folder, my nails digging into the paper. And you've been signing off on this? Richard looked away, shame flickering in his eyes. I didn't have a choice. Daniel's got leverage on me, on others. If I didn't play along, I'd lose everything. I didn't care about his excuses. You're going to help me fix this, I said. Or I'll take this folder to the IRS myself. He nodded, defeated. What do you need? Everything, I said. Every document, every email, every deal Vanessa's touched. And I want to know who else is involved. As I left his office, the weight of the folder in my bag felt like a bomb. I drove home, my mind racing. Daniel had built his empire on lies, and Vanessa was his accomplice. But I wasn't just fighting for revenge. I was fighting for Lily, for the life I'd thought we had. I wouldn't let them take that from me. At home, I hid the folder in a locked drawer and started digging deeper. I called in favors from old colleagues, piecing together Sterling's financial puzzle. The more I uncovered, the worse it got. Bribes to city officials, inflated property values, fake invoices. Daniel wasn't just cheating on me, he was a criminal, and Vanessa was his partner in every sense. That night, Daniel came home late, reeking of whiskey and her perfume. You look tired, he said, his tone mocking. Rough day. I forced a smile. You have no idea. He didn't notice the steel in my voice. He thought I was still the naive wife who'd never question him. But I was done playing that role. The next morning, I met with a private investigator, a grizzled man named Tom who'd worked with my father years ago. I need dirt on Vanessa Kessler, I told him, and I need it fast. Tom raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to open that can of worms? I'm not just opening it, I said. I'm blowing it up. Tom delivered within days. Vanessa wasn't just Daniel's assistant. She had a history. Embezzlement charges dropped in her 20s, a string of wealthy boyfriends, and a knack for covering her tracks. She'd been playing Daniel, too, siphoning money into her own accounts. I almost laughed. They deserved each other. I took Tom's report to Richard. This is your way out, I said. Help me bring them down, and I'll make sure you're protected. Richard hesitated, then nodded. I'll get you the rest of the files. But Claire, Daniel's dangerous when cornered. Be careful. I didn't care about danger. I was past fear, fueled by a rage so pure it felt like clarity. That night, I sat in Lily's room, watching her sleep. Her face was so peaceful, so untouched by the ugliness I was uncovering. I'd do whatever it took to keep it that way. The next step was confronting Vanessa. I found her at a downtown cafe, sipping espresso like she didn't have a care in the world. She was younger than me, maybe 30, with sharp cheekbones and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Claire, she said, feigning surprise. What a coincidence. No coincidence, I said, sitting across from her. I know everything. The accounts, the money, Daniel. All of it. Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. You're out of your depth, Claire. Go back to your perfect little life. I leaned in, my voice low. You're the one who's done, Vanessa. I have proof, and I'm not afraid to use it. She laughed, but it was nervous. Daniel won't let you touch his business. We'll see, I said, standing. Enjoy your coffee. Vanessa's confidence was a mask, and I'd seen it slip. As I walked away from the cafe, my phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Got the files. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m. I felt a surge of triumph, but it was tempered by dread. This wasn't just about exposing Daniel and Vanessa anymore. It was about dismantling everything they'd built, and I had to be ready for the fallout. At home, Daniel was pacing the living room, his phone pressed to his ear. No, she doesn't know anything, he snapped, then froze when he saw me. He hung up quickly, his face a mix of guilt and defiance. Where've you been? He demanded. Out, I said, brushing past him. You're not the only one with a life. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't push. He thought he was still in control. I let him believe it, biding my time. That night, I pored over the files Richard had sent, hundreds of pages detailing Sterling's illegal deals. Vanessa's name was everywhere, her signatures on contracts, her emails coordinating payments. She wasn't just complicit. She was the architect of half the scheme. I called Tom again. I need more on Vanessa, I said. Her connections, her weaknesses. You're playing with fire, he warned, but he agreed to dig deeper. By the next morning, he had a lead. Vanessa was meeting a man named Victor Lang, a city councilman tied to Sterling's land deals. If I could get proof of their connection, it would be the final nail in the coffin. I met Richard at his office, where he handed me a USB drive. This is everything, he said. Bank records, emails, contracts. If this gets out, Sterling's done. And you? I asked. He sighed. I'm out. I'm done covering for him. I studied him, searching for a lie, but his eyes were tired, not deceitful. Why now? I asked. Because you mentioned the affair, he said. I've got a wife, Claire. I know what betrayal feels like. His words hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I saw myself in his wife, someone who'd trusted, loved, and been burned. I pushed the thought aside. Thank you, I said, pocketing the USB. Stay out of Daniel's way. As I left, I felt the weight of what I was doing. This wasn't just revenge. It was justice. For me, for Lily, for every lie Daniel had told. But I needed to be smart. Victor Lang was my next target, and I had to move fast. Tom arranged for me to tail Vanessa to her meeting with Lang. I sat in a rented car across from a sleek downtown restaurant, watching as she slipped inside, her arm brushing Lang's. I snapped photos, my hands steady despite the adrenaline. When they left together, I followed, catching them entering a private club. Tom's contact inside got me audio. Lang promising Vanessa a cut of a new development deal if she kept quiet about Sterling's bribes. I had them, but I needed more than evidence. I needed leverage. I called Richard again. Can you get me into Lang's office? He hesitated. That's risky, Claire. So is letting them walk away, I shot back. He sighed. I'll make a call. 2 days later, I was in Lang's office posing as a consultant. His desk was a mess of papers, and while he droned on about zoning laws, I slipped a flash drive into his computer, copying files. One document stood out. A memo detailing Sterling's payments to Lang for consulting. It was enough to tie them all together. That night, I sat with Lily, helping her with homework, trying to keep my mind off the storm I was about to unleash. Mom, are you okay? She asked, her brown eyes searching mine. I'm fine, baby. I lied, kissing her forehead. But I wasn't fine. I was terrified, not of Daniel or Vanessa, but of what this would do to Lily. Still, I couldn't stop. Not now. I met with a journalist friend, Sarah, who worked for the city paper. "This is explosive," she said, scanning the files. "You're sure you want to go public?" "I'm sure," I said, "but I want it timed right." She nodded. "Give me a week to verify everything." As I drove home, I felt a strange calm. The pieces were falling into place. Daniel and Vanessa thought they were untouchable, but I was about to prove them wrong. The week before Sarah's story broke, I kept up appearances. I cooked dinner, smiled at Daniel, even let him kiss my cheek, though it made my skin crawl. He didn't suspect a thing, too wrapped up in his own world to notice the fire in my eyes. Vanessa, though, was sharper. I caught her watching me at a company event, her gaze calculating, like she sensed the noose tightening. I planned everything carefully. Sarah's article would expose Sterling's corruption, naming Daniel, Vanessa, and Lang. Richard had agreed to testify anonymously, his conscience finally outweighing his fear. But I needed one more piece to ensure they couldn't wiggle out: a confession. I invited Vanessa to our house under the pretense of discussing Lily's school fundraiser. She arrived, all fake smiles and designer heels, her confidence grating. "Nice place," she said, glancing around. "Must be hard to keep up, being just a housewife." I ignored the jab. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the couch. "We need to talk." She raised an eyebrow but sat. I poured us wine, letting the silence stretch. "I know about the offshore accounts," I said finally. "And your deal with Lang." Her glass froze halfway to her lips. "You're bluffing." I slid a photo across the table, one of her and Lang at the club. "Am I?" Her face hardened. "What do you want, Claire?" "The truth," I said. "Admit what you and Daniel did, and maybe I'll go easy." She laughed, but it was brittle. "You think you can scare me? Daniel's got more power than you'll ever have." "Then why are you sweating?" I asked, leaning forward. "You're in over your head, Vanessa. Help me, and I'll make sure you don't go down with him." For a moment I thought she'd crack, but she stood, tossing her hair. "You're pathetic," she said. "You'll never touch us." She stormed out, but I'd recorded every word. Her denial was as good as a confession. She'd all but confirmed her involvement. I sent the audio to Sarah, who added it to the story. The trap was set. The night before the article dropped, Daniel came home early, a rare occurrence. "We need to talk," he said, his tone softer than usual. For a fleeting second, I wondered if he'd confess, if he'd beg forgiveness. But he didn't. "I'm taking Vanessa to the Miami conference next week," he said. "It's good for business." I stared at him, my heart a stone. "Sure," I said. "Have fun." He didn't catch the edge in my voice. He never did. As he slept that night, I slipped into his office, copying the last of his emails. One caught my eye, a message to Vanessa. "If Claire finds out, we're done. Keep her out of it." Too late, I thought. The next morning, the article hit. My phone buzzed with notifications as Sarah's story spread like wildfire. Sterling Enterprises embroiled in scandal. Tax evasion, bribes, and betrayal, the headline screamed. Daniel's face was plastered across the front page, alongside Vanessa's and Lang's. I watched from the kitchen as he opened his laptop, his expression shifting from confusion to horror. "Claire!" he roared, storming toward me. "What the hell is this?" I sipped my coffee, calm as a lake. "The truth," I said. "You should try it sometime." He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "You did this? You ruined me?" I yanked free, my voice ice. "You ruined yourself, Daniel. You and Vanessa." He opened his mouth, but his phone rang, his bored, no doubt. He answered, his face ashen, and I walked away, leaving him to drown in his own mess. By noon, the fallout was everywhere. Social media was ablaze, clients were pulling out, and the IRS was circling. Richard called me, his voice shaky. "I'm out, Claire. I quit this morning. They're coming for Daniel." "Good," I said. "What about Vanessa?" "She's gone quiet," he said. "Probably running." She wouldn't get far. I'd made sure of that. Vanessa didn't run. She was too arrogant for that. Instead, she showed up at our house that evening, banging on the door like a cornered animal. I let her in, curious to see how she'd play this. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes wild. "You think you've won?" she spat. "You're nothing without Daniel." I crossed my arms, unfazed. "And you're nothing without his money. How's that working out for you?" She lunged forward, but I stepped aside, letting her stumble. "Get out," I said, "or I call the police." She left, but not before hurling insults that bounced off me like rain. I had bigger problems. Daniel was spiraling, his empire crumbling faster than I'd expected. By the next day, the board had forced him out as CEO, and the feds were raiding Sterling's offices. I watched it unfold on the news, Lily at school, oblivious to the chaos. I met with Sarah again, handing over the last of the evidence. Vanessa's recorded confession, Lang's memo, Daniel's emails. "This will bury them," she said, her eyes gleaming. "You're sure you're okay with this?" "I have to be," I said. "For Lily." That night, Daniel came home drunk, his tie loose, his eyes bloodshot. "You've destroyed everything," he slurred, collapsing onto the couch. "Why, Claire?" I stood over him, my voice steady. "Because you betrayed us. You chose her over me, over Lily. You don't get to play the victim." He sobbed, but I felt no pity. He'd made his choices, and now he'd face the consequences. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up, leaving a note. "I'm sorry. It was too little, too late." I focused on Lily, keeping her routine normal: school, soccer, bedtime stories. But the questions were coming. "Why's Daddy on TV?" she asked one night, her voice small. "He made some mistakes," I said, hugging her. "But we're going to be okay." The legal battles started soon after. Daniel hired a new lawyer, some shark who thought he could spin the story. But Richard's testimony, combined with my evidence, was airtight. Vanessa tried to cut a deal, throwing Daniel under the bus. But the feds weren't buying it. She was indicted alongside him, her dreams of wealth evaporating. I wasn't unscathed. Friends distanced themselves, embarrassed by the scandal. The house felt too big, too empty without Daniel's presence, even if it had been toxic. But I had Lily and I had my strength. I started consulting again, using my old skills to rebuild. Clients were hesitant at first, but my reputation as the woman who took down Sterling Enterprises grew, and soon I was turning down offers. One day Richard called. "They're pleading guilty," he said. "Daniel and Vanessa. It's over." I exhaled, relief washing over me. "Thank you," I said, "for choosing the right side." "I didn't have a choice," he said. "You made sure of that." I smiled. He was right. The courtroom was colder than I'd expected, the air heavy with the weight of justice. Daniel sat at the defendant's table, his suit wrinkled, his eyes avoiding mine. Vanessa was beside him, her face a mask of defiance, but her hands trembled. I sat in the gallery, Lily at home with a sitter, my heart a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. The judge read the charges: tax evasion, bribery, fraud. Daniel's plea was guilty, his voice barely audible. Vanessa followed, her voice sharper, as if she could still talk her way out. The evidence was overwhelming, my files the backbone of the case. When the judge sentenced them, 5 years for Daniel, 3 for Vanessa, I felt no joy, only closure. Outside, reporters swarmed, but I slipped away, needing quiet. At home, I found Lily drawing, her crayons scattered across the table. "Is Daddy coming home soon?" she asked. I knelt beside her, choosing my words carefully. "Not for a while, sweetheart, but we're going to be okay. Just you and me." She nodded, her trust in me unwavering. It was enough to keep me going. The aftermath was messy. Sterling Enterprises collapsed, its assets seized. I sold the house, too tainted by memories, and moved with Lily to a smaller place, cozy and ours. I kept working, building a new life, one where I called the shots. Friends came back, some with apologies, others with admiration. I didn't need their validation, but it felt good. Vanessa's name faded from the headlines, her reputation in tatters. Daniel wrote me from prison, a rambling letter about regret and love. I burned it without responding. He'd lost the right to my forgiveness. Richard started over, too, opening a small practice far from the city. He sent me a card. "You changed everything, Claire. Thank you." I tucked it away, a reminder of what I'd done. As months passed, I found peace in routine, Lily's laughter, my work, the simple joy of a life unshadowed by lies. But one question lingered. Had I gone too far? The answer came late one night as I watched Lily sleep. I'd fought for her, for us. That was enough. A year later, I stood in our new backyard, watching Lily chase fireflies under a twilight sky. The air was warm, the grass soft under my feet, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The scars of Daniel's betrayal hadn't vanished, but they'd faded, replaced by the strength I'd found in myself. I'd rebuilt my career, consulting for firms that valued my mind, not my husband's name. Lily was thriving, her smile brighter each day. We'd faced whispers and judgment, but we'd come through, together. The world knew me as the woman who'd brought down an empire, but to Lily I was just mom, and that was enough. Sometimes I thought of Vanessa, alone somewhere, her ambition her only companion. I wondered if she regretted it, if she saw the ruin she'd helped create. Daniel's letters still came, each one more desperate, but I never opened them. He was my past, not my future. Richard called one day, his voice lighter than I'd ever heard. "You doing okay, Claire?" "Better than okay," I said. "You?" "Getting there," he said. "You were right to fight." I smiled, hanging up. The fight had cost me friends, trust, pieces of my heart, but it had given me something greater, myself. I'd been the wife Daniel thought he could control, the woman Vanessa thought she could outsmart. They were wrong. As Lily ran to me, giggling, I scooped her up, her warmth grounding me. The stars were out, bright against the dark, and I knew we'd be all right. I'd torn down an empire, not for revenge, but for truth. For Lily. For me. And that was worth everything.